Welcome to the WdY&x podcast. Our topic for today is developing leaders of tomorrow. And our special guest is Eric Ebron. After a distinguished 10 years career in United States Marine Corps and 15 years as a director in the aerospace industry, Eric knows what it takes to build a high-performing teams and navigate complex transitions. Now, he is dedicated to help leaders, consultants, and trainers to find their ideal clients and drive success in the competitive aerospace and automotive industry as the founder and owner of SME Consulting. To get rid of tired cliche-ridden leadership program, he is revolutionizing the stale leadership model with his cutting-edge magnet, MAGNET. He'll talk about it more later. Method, delivering actionable strategy, and personalized result. He's also a pioneer ways to measure leadership wins and losses and empowering you to refine your approach for maximum impact. Eric is passionate about helping leaders translate the discipline, adaptability, and strategic thinking needed in today's fast-paced environment. His expertise covers everything from business transition to scaling leadership across large teams. Welcome, Eric.
Good morning, Will. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. It's great meeting you, and I look forward to having this discussion on leadership.
Thank you, Eric. My first question: can you share your career journey?
Yes. So, as a young guy, some time ago, I joined the Marine Corps, and I loved it. As I tell people, just recently, I was brainwashed pretty well. And I found that I have a knack for leadership. It started like real early, like even in boot camp when they said, hey, let me get 3 people to step out. And one of the golden rules going into Marine Corps boot camp is never volunteer. And I couldn't help myself. I couldn't stand there. And while 80 people are there and no one steps forward. And so after what seemed like an agonizing 5 seconds, I had to step forward. And since that time, I've been doing it every single time. So after the military, I went into a small business. Shortly thereafter, I was the operations leader of a small business. And then I went mid-level business. That's how I got into kind of aviation industry. After a short time, I was a customer service manager there. Then I got into a large business, large aerospace company. And what seemingly was a short amount of time for that level of growth, I grew to a good developer of leaders and a director in the aerospace industry. So it's been a long journey, but for me, it's been filled with these moments of success that kind of lead to my entrepreneurship now as the owner and founder of SME Consulting.
Now I can see why you're a perfect person to talk about developing leaders of tomorrow because of the story that that you just told us. Next, I want to go to a shout out section. This particular section, I want to shout out and dedicate this particular episode to my coach, Jackie Yoon. She's been my coach for over a dozen years. Has been helping me, challenging me, right? I think so. I really want to dedicate this to her. Who do you want to shout out this episode to?
I want to shout this out to my wife. I know that sounds cliche considering I said cliche-ridden tropes, but in this particular case, she's a rather an introvert, right? You say opposites attract. And wherever we go, I talk like this. So I'm excited, I'm passionate, and sometimes she has to say like, honey, we're in a restaurant. But ultimately, whether it's a Denny's or Bob Evans or whether it's BJ's Steakhouse, someplace fancy, someone comes up. This happens 2 or 3 times a month. Someone comes up and says, hey, I'm sorry, I couldn't help but overhearing. I enjoyed your conversation about leadership or about raising your kids or about setting, examples of what we should do as a people. And my wife just kind of nods her head as they compliment me, whatever. And then they walk away and my wife goes like, again, like we can't go any place without someone coming up to you. So I want to shout out my wife for having the patience while random people kind of come up and give compliments on that.
Well, you have celebrity status already, right there. I'll go into the next question. I think it's important to answer the question around what inspired you to dedicate your time in developing leaders of tomorrow, because that's a challenging work.
I would say that first, that's a great question. I've never quite considered myself lucky. And I mentioned before, kind of in my introduction, that I've always found myself in positions of leadership rather quickly. But what's happened to me is that as I've moved quickly, sometimes, and you may notice it, or as your audience may notice it, it creates kind of a wake behind a rising person. And if that wake isn't filled with established leadership or potential really good leadership, problems and troubles occur. So as I grew in these companies and moved rather swiftly, I found that there weren't people sometimes that weren't as opportunistic as I was. They weren't as prepared as I was. And so as I've grown, I've always kind of looked back and said to those around me, hey, you got potential, right? Let's partner. Let me help you fill this wake. Let's fill this gap. Let's do this together. And I found that it gives me a sense of self-worth. Companies pay you, right? Or in my particular case, I provide a service, they pay me. But what I really enjoy is nurturing kind of talent and leadership development and accomplishments. And those things help bring me joy. So that's the inspiration, is watching these leaders grow, filling that leader pipeline.
And I think the one thing, as you were telling your story, the one thing that the undertone of the whole thing is you care. You care to develop. Because I work in many, many companies, and yes, you get paid to do a job, and doing your job sometimes that's what people do. That's it. But a few of us goes above and beyond and take the extra time out of our busy day, or extra time beyond our busy day, to make ourselves available, and also look out for leaders that are potentially could be the next generation leader or leader right now that just happen to be not having the opportunity. So I think as you tell the story, I'm like, wow, that he cares more than other people.
I like that, Will. I didn't always think so until sometimes you meet leaders who or there's a strong juxtaposition, right, in a particular spot, and then you see that, and then you go, oh wow, I to me it's normal, right? I thought every leader is like this, and then you meet those leaders that aren't, and it's not like they necessarily are against growing or nurturing people. They just may not have it in them, right? And they don't know why. It's not their thing. It's not their passion. And then you realize that you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
And this goes for me. This goes for leaders on second shift, or potential leaders, or people that are young, but really they're just young in the leadership ways, but they still might be in their 30s, and they think life is over. And I'm going, guys, for most people, life don't start to your 30s, right? let's do this together. Let's get you where you need to be. And by the way, I used to always say this in industry. I go, do you want this chair? Right. So here I am, the GM of these various aerospace sites.
Yeah.
And I go, do you want this chair? And they look at me. I'm 4 or 5 levels away from them. And they were just kind of like, I never thought about it. I said, think about it. Think about
Very
it.
inspiring.
Why not? Yeah. Why not?
Very inspiring and motivating, right? It's like
I love doing it, and I love them growing.
Amazing. I'll go to the next question. Can you share a pivotal moment or experience that shaped the approach to developing leaders?
I was a young leader of about 20, 25 employees, and we kind of had some tasks. So I was a second shift leader. So let's start it this way. And second shift is typically considered a lot of the kind of the redhead stepchildren of a lot of industry. But I love forming teams. I love motivating people. And so we had this task. I said, guys, we're going to reduce our nonconformances. We're going to increase our customer satisfaction. We're going to get where other shift leaders, other shifts want to be like us. And so we worked hard, and we accomplished that, right? What happened was the operations leader walked around, saw one of my team members, and said, hey, what are you using? And he said, this is this new tool that we developed. He says, what do you mean we developed? He says, yeah, Eric, my leader, said we need to do X, Y, Z. He tasked us with coming up with some solutions for this, and this is what we're testing out. And the operations leader of a 200-person site says, wait, you guys developed something that you're tasking and checking out? And we said, yeah. By the way, that ended up being the standard. 7 months later, that's the standard by which this site now utilizes and measures their nonconformance. that was actually sent across to 5 or 6 other aerospace sites,
Wow.
and they utilized it as well. So it started off small. Now, what happened, and here's what shaped that approach, is that eventually I became the operations leader, right? So, but I remember something that that person said to me. He said, Eric, when a good leader moves to another position and the former team starts to degrade, right? It starts to lose its momentum. He goes, that's kind of a sign that you didn't have the right processes in place. And that changed that changed it. He says if a team really is doing well and it's because the charisma of the leader, then that's great, right? You get things
Mm.
done, but processes aren't in place. And as you move up, Eric, they're going to look for processes. You're going to look for something. And sure enough, that kind of changed me identifying, documenting, coming up with coursework
Mm.
for my team members, coming up with something that the next generation of leaders can look, read, mimic, copy, and they become just as successful, instead of creating this wake so fast that then the team members get disheartened, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes it gets rough when you lose a really good leader.
Yes, yes.
And so you have to build a great pipeline, prepare your replacement. And eventually that ended up happening, but that changed the way I thought about leadership and nurturing leadership.
It's amazing where your story started from empowerment and mobilizing your team, and that turned out to be something that you mentioned the organization implemented across. And the next part that I really love is it's great you're successful at the area where you're in, but like you said, your job is not just to be successful where you are, but when you move up, you need to also think about what challenges that's creating. And I think that's really a hallmark of a great leader, because you're not only thinking about today, you're also thinking about tomorrow. And tomorrow is quite important, not super important compared to today, but it's equally important going forward from a succession planning. So thank you for sharing that story.
Thank you. Yes.
Very powerful. The next question is, how do you define effective leadership? And what qualities do you believe are essential for leaders of tomorrow?
So if you look up in Google, right, you'll find all kinds of different definitions throughout the years of leadership and what that looks like. For me, I have kind of 4 simple items for effective leadership. One is a leader uses the most efficient use of their personnel. If you have 20 people, how best are you using those 20? I've had leaders come to me and say, hey, Eric, I need to hire, 3 more people to get this task done. And I say, how many you have? And they said, I have 19. And I said, okay, give me their productivity scores for your 19. And come to find out that only 15 are really productive. The other 4 are not doing so well. So I would say to them, why would I let you get 3 additional people when you're not being as effective to the 4 that you have there? If you get those 4 numbers up, then you might only need 1, and you can increase 5 to 10% more in your productivity per week, per month, per quarter. So the most effective use of your personnel. The next would be the lowest cost per method, right? That's also something, right? Some teams work really well, but they have high cost. They run through their parts. Or they run through their resources, they run through their time. They have a lot of overtime for this group, and you're saying, hey, to get the same job done, why are you running at 25% overtime? When in essence, as a leader, as the site leader, I only want no more than 12% overtime for a group. And yet you're running 25%, and you're saying that's what you need to do to get the job done. So the lowest cost per method. Third would be maintaining or increasing morale. What leader should not have that as an effective way to lead or measure themselves on whether their morale is maintaining or they're increasing? That I take that personal, that my team feels good about coming to work, being here, right? You spend 8 to 10 hours, you should feel good about what you're doing. And the last is kind of repositioning the team to be ready to achieve the next tasks, right? So the change, right? So change comes. There's this area where you're saying, man, I don't know if we're going to get it done. We put in some new processes. We start to meet those process changes that we do. We start to exceed what we did before, and we see, hey, that's great. And then we have to be ready for the next change, right? So that's very important. Now, some of the essential qualities, and I'll make this real simple. Leaders got to be adaptable, right? Again, change is always there. One of my mantras I say is to myself and my team is I say, change can be the hero and the villain to your life. A lot of people thrive in change, like myself, but some don't. So change is the villain. They want things to stay the same. A high emotional quotient is very important.
Yeah.
I think charisma and being empathetic is really good for a leader. And then maintaining a high moral character. So that those things are very important. And I think if leaders adopt those items, they're unstoppable. They're unstoppable in any area or method they get put in.
Thank you for sharing the qualities and the four criteria that you look for. I really appreciate that. Next question ahead. In your opinion, what role does mentoring play in developing the leaders of tomorrow?
So as you may know, the higher you go up in corporate, right? There's about 5 years ago, I ran across a team. I was in some development courses for high potential leaders. And that's when I ran across the term leaders need sponsors. And I was like, wow, I was in an area now to hear this term being thrown around about sponsors. Like you can only go so high without sponsors. And so before you get to the sponsor arena, mentors are very, very important. So to me, mentorship is an exciting tool in developing leader qualities, right? Because as growing leaders, there are some things that you would not be able to accomplish alone. It's just, it's not there. One of them is mentors provide guidance and support. So you can get guidance and support from your peers, but it's not the same. Your boss can do so much for it, but they still ultimately have to measure your productivity. But mentors may be outside of that realm. So they can look at you objectively and they give you that guidance and support you need. Number 2 is experiential insights. Very, very, very important, right? A lot of the leaders that you have, they will bring their experiences. They will say, this happened 5 years ago, or when I was at this level, or when I was at your level. And it helps you as a young leader or any leader kind of see, hey, there's still more to go. And you have the right people in place that's before you to help see that happening. And the last would be mentors provide accountability. Very, very important. So one thing I'm learning or getting into, Will, is as an entrepreneur, right? I'm trying to network with people and such as yourself, right? Experienced, accomplished professionals that help provide accountability even in an entrepreneurial space. Because sometimes you can, right? You work so alone, right? You work 14 hours a day. What you build is what you're doing to support your family. And you can lose that accountability partner besides a mentor. So those 3 areas typically cannot be nurtured in an alone state or by yourself state. So mentorship is very important for leadership.
Thank you for sharing the three pillars: experiential accountability and the third party perspective. Thank you for sharing that. Next question: how do you navigate the balance between nurturing someone or addressing their problem areas through coaching?
First off, great question. I've ran across probably this area 3 times in the last 20 years where I'm talking to people who report to me, like senior managers. And the senior manager comes and says, hey, Eric, I'm having a problem with this particular manager or this manager. And I said, okay, so have you had the discussion with him? Have you talked about productivity? And he says, yes. I said this, and this. I said, okay, great. Let's see what happens. A couple of weeks go by, no better performance from that particular lower manager. And then I said, hey, listen, let me do a skip level meeting with this lower manager. Let's see where they are. Let's guide. As I have that meeting, come to find out the junior manager is like, no, I talked to so-and-so, my leader, and we said this and he said that. And I said, wait, how did you take that? Because I'm looking at this was a conversation on your performance. And he says, no, he was just coaching me. And I said, so there's an issue in leadership sometimes that if you don't express or say certain words. So I would go back to the leader to report to me and I said, listen, I need you to say, this is a performance discussion, or I need you to say, this is a coaching opportunity. I'm going to give you some exercises and some activities to help increase your ability to be a better leader versus this is a productivity conversation, and you're not meeting or measuring up to what I need as a manager. You now need to do this, this, and this. So I think leaders have to learn and balance that conversation. I have expressly had conversations with senior leaders who reported to me. And I said, listen, your performance isn't where we need to do. So I'm going to give you a series of value added tasks. And this is how I said it. This is value added tasks that are part of your performance. It's part of your team. It's part of the expectation. So here, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to meet back next week, same time. I want a 6-slide presentation on how you handled X, Y, and Z, right? And then I'm going to probably task you again. And then a week later, so now in a 2-week period, we're going to measure how well that first task and your implementation of those strategies to your team worked. And upon doing that, that was my way of kind of not just having a performance discussion, but giving these value-added tasks. So I kind of skirted the line of coach, but also saying, listen, these things need to be done for your performance. Subsequently, 4 months later, I had to, that senior manager had to move on to another job because, ultimately, although I wanted to increase their performance, I wanted to nurture their approach as a coach, I was their boss, right? So I really needed them to perform at a high caliber.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you need to do. You have to add these value-added exercises sometimes and say, this is a coaching opportunity, or this is a value-added exercise I need you to do. This is a performance discussion. And as consultants and coaches, you have to guide them to be their best self, right? That's what you do. And sometimes they can't see it, but we have that responsibility to kind of shine a light on what it takes to be a better leader.
So I'm hearing context is extremely important. Putting the discussion into context, a performance discussion context versus a coaching context, because they're two very different. And I love your approach where you give them value added. And I love the word value added, right? Exercise and then having an implementation thereafter. So you could actually measure the progress and how they're intaking the activity and improving themselves. Thank you for sharing that. Next question I have: in today's rapid changing world, what do you see as the biggest challenge and opportunity in developing leaders?
The biggest change I see is that we're kind of in this accelerated ramp up of industry. And the last few years have been troublesome. And a lot of industry across between automotive, aerospace, and others are ramping really, really fast. And what we found is that we're starting to run into the issues where leadership has not caught up with that change. After in the last few years, many senior leaders, many people retired. Maybe, hey, listen, I don't want to do this anymore, which is great. But we also found that there wasn't a suitable filled pipeline like throughout the industry, right? Many leaders created this vacuum. And so what happened is a lot of young leaders had this opportunity in the last 2 years, 3 years, which is perfect, but they don't have the experience necessary to really bring a superb team into the era that's created now, right? Shareholder ROI is not only expected, but it's really robust in today's time, right? Because we're trying to again catch up. So that's what we're running into, right? Supply chain industry issues have kind of cleared up, and now that it's cleared up, everyone wants to move this fast. So I think the biggest opportunity we have lies in leader developed programs. The industry I was in, aerospace, there's been a huge push in the last couple of years to try to really get these young leaders the level of experience and opportunity to be better. I actually sat on a couple of pilot programs, leadership programs at my last job. At my director level, they brought in 30 of us across the country and said, hey, listen, we're thinking of rolling out this leadership program. We're going to invite you guys the next 3 days to kind of evaluate what it looks like. I liked it. I think it was great. And then it was 2 years later where I had a couple of young leaders say to me, hey, I have this thing that's coming up next week. It's new. It's this. And I said, oh, that's the pilot program I was in. So I said, you're going to enjoy it. If you have any questions, let me know. But that's what we're having. Companies are kind of struggling. I think they're struggling to keep up with leadership development, and the market is really forcing them to kind of invest in their people right now. And if they don't, we would definitely be able to see which industry and which companies are succeeding by how well they're developing their leaders at this time.
Thank you for sharing that. I think developing leaders for tomorrow is really extremely important for every company. And sometimes I could sense that they're taking that as and put it on a back burner because they have other important priority. But unbeknown to them, by not doing that or not investing in that, they're losing their momentum, right, going forward.
Exactly.
Can you share a success story of a leader you coach and highlight the transformational impact of that person?
That's great. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually spoke to this leader 2 days ago. I'm still in touch with this young guy, right? So what happened? I was a GM of a site, an aerospace location in Kansas. And I got there, had a new team of 200 people, right? And as a new leader, it's always interesting coming to a new culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of assess the culture and then figure out where we're going. So part of that time, my leader, corporate leader, says to me, "Hey, you have a guy there that's a high potential. As a matter of fact, he wanted the role that you now have. He's not ready, but we're giving him opportunities." And I said, "No problem." I said, let's do this. And he didn't report to me. So he was actually a couple of levels below me. So I went to his office and I sat down with him. I said, "Listen, hey, I hear you want a position I had." He says, "Yeah." I said, "Listen, everyone's saying your name. Everyone likes you, right? They have you on the high pot list. I will put you and continue on the high pot list. But if you don't mind, I want to be frank with you." And he says, "Go ahead." I said, you're not quite ready. And what happens in leadership is that when you get higher and you get in positions that you're not ready for, sometimes it'll chew you up and spit you out. Right? That's business.
Yeah.
Right. And so I said, if you don't mind, I said, now your boss who reports to me, his job to get you what you need to develop and to grow. But what I'll do is monthly, you and I will meet. We'll assess where we are, what it looks like, and what it takes to get to the next level. Would you? He says, yes. Okay. 4 or 5 months later, he's listening to me. I'm giving his boss tasks to get him ready. Sure enough, he ended up getting a next position, which is great. Still, now he reports to me directly. He says, "Hey, Eric, thank you for that guidance. I wouldn't have been here without it." I said, "Hey, you're on your way, but let's keep going." And then a few months later, I'm in a meeting. I hear somebody retired someplace down the road. I said, I told my boss, I said, "Hold on a second." I went next door. I said, "Listen, I'm on a meeting right now. When I get off the meeting, I want you to send an email to this person, this person, this person. Say you just heard there's an opening possibly in another state. You think you're ready for it?" And he was like, "Really? Really?" Sure enough, he did so. He came back to me. He says, "Eric, do you think you're ready?" I said, "I know you're ready." Sure enough, he ended up getting a GM spot in another state, which was an opportunity. And then, so that was great. A year later, he calls me up. He says, "Everything is going great here, but there's a director position that's opening up. And what do you think?" I said, "You're ready." Because I am. I go, "Here's what you do. Here's what you did. Here's what here's the model. Here's what you're over." He goes, I never thought of it that way." I said, "Think of it that way, because this is what they're looking for." Before you know it, he was a director. And all that happened within a 3-year period. So that's one of not just my success story, but that's his. And sure enough, we were talking a couple of days ago, and he says, "Eric, I thank you." And I said, "Listen, I'm glad your kids and your wife and your family, I'm glad you guys are happy. My job is to help you get to where you are, whether you work for me or don't. I enjoy this, and we're friends." So I think that's an opportunity for me of coaching to a success, coaching leaders to where they need to be, finding out first, by the way, where do they want to be? Mm-hmm. Because I have been in positions where I hear someone wants to be someplace. I get them ready. And then they go, "Oh, that's not the job I want." And I was like, right. I kind of should have asked that question at the beginning. Where do you want to be, or what do you want to do? And coaches and consultants, we need to listen to our young leaders. And by the way, young leaders, you need to have an idea where you want to be.
True. Very true.
We'll get you there, but we need you to know or what your ask is.
Thank you for sharing that very inspiring story. And what I really love about that is, as a new leader going to a new site, it sometimes could be intimidating to see like how people will react. But knowingly, someone is eyeing for your position. And as a great leader, you took that as an opportunity to coach and mentor someone, while other leaders would take that as a threat, right? And treat that person badly. I've seen that in the past, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, that person's a threat, so I need to make sure I keep that person's arm's length. But no, you did not do that, but you did the opposite. So truly show a hallmark of a great leader. Thank you for sharing that inspiring story. Thank you. I think we talk a lot about developing leaders, experiential mentoring, giving them value added tasks. If there's three takeaway for our audience for today, what are those three takeaways that you want them to remember so badly when this session ended?
I would say one takeaway: find a mentor. It's very, very important for your development growth. I initially realized that I needed to get into this networking space. This was some years ago. And to do that, to find the right people, to associate myself with the right people, and to find a mentor to tell me where I needed to go or help give me that piece. So that's one. Leaders should find a mentor. Even myself, right? I was just in contact with an old mentor of mine. He retired 3 years ago. He lives in Charlotte, great guy, and we're connecting over WhatsApp, right? And he's still mentoring me, right? Years later. Another would be, I would say, to be that effective leader we're talking about is make the most efficient use of your people. I had a team member come to me once years ago, and she says, "Hey, Eric, I need to do this. Can I take my laptop? Can I work an additional 3 or 4 hours at home?" And I said, "No." And she says, "But I need this." I said, "What I'm hearing from you is that you cannot get 8 hours of work done in an 8 hour period." She goes, "Well, that's not." I said, "No, that's exactly what you're saying." I said, "How are you efficiently using your people to help get your work done?" And it took a little bit of time, but she came back to me later and she says, "Thank you for that." Because I was scrambling and I wasn't using all of my people, right? I was using the best people, burning them out. And the people that weren't the best, I didn't want to involve them. And so use the most efficient use of your people. That's probably number two. And I think that the third thing would be look for and take advantage of the opportunities when they come. So you hear that deal where it says opportunity knocks, right?
Yeah.
Opportunity knocks once. I think good young leaders, good middle leaders, and good senior leaders should always be ready, right? Always have your ear to the door, develop yourself, get yourself read, and then be ready for that opportunity. Because when it comes, you need to jump in and have that, take that win, jump into it. And again, a lot of young leaders sometimes don't have that confidence, right? And, or they say to themselves, I've heard this 1,000 times. Hey, I still want to do this. I still have more to do before I go, guys, some things you're never going to finish as a leader, right? You can come in with this vision. You're never going to finish those. Go ahead and get as ready as you can. Do the most as you can. Be ready for that next position. Take it and then help coach someone behind you to finish some of the things that you were doing if that's possible. But there you go. Take the opportunities.
Thank you for sharing those three great takeaway. Can you share to my audience your current work and any project, and how they could reach out to you in case they're
Yeah.
interested in having conversation?
Yeah. Thanks for that. And so at my website, which we'll have that on the deal, that's a way to contact me. I do one-on-one coaching. I think it's very important to have a sit down with someone. And by the way, for me, that first coaching session, free, right? I want to engage with someone. I want to develop a relationship. I want to find out what the problem is so we can sit and see whether I can help. It's very important. Two, I have my leadership book is coming out this summer. Right now, it's kind of titled The Leadership Compass. I'm looking forward to that. And then three, I have my Magnet Leadership course that's going to start this summer as well. So my Magnet Leadership course, and Magnet, MAGNET, stands for one, model your moments. right? 2, acknowledge the win. 3, guide through each goal. N or 4 is navigate the minefield. E is eliminate the cliches. And then T, take the big steps. And what that does is that gives us a nice model for young leaders, mid-level leaders, and senior leaders that we can follow and say, with these 6 principles, I'm staying in the vein of effective leadership. And then that's the point, I think, right? You can kind of get complacent. I've seen plenty of complacent leaders. The higher they go. So I think getting a refreshing as a leader. By the way, Will, I've replaced complacent leaders. Right. So I had the opportunity. My ear was to the door. I was ready. Complacent leaders, they get complacent, and someone says, "Hey, Eric, we need you to finish what they're not doing." And so that magnet method, I think, will be very effective. I'm looking forward to that this summer. I'm looking forward to people coming in saying, "Hey, I like these principles. These 4 are perfect. This is where I need to be. These 2 I already have." But I think it's a great method of leadership that junior all the way up to C-suite leaders can follow and get more effective at leadership.
Thank you, Eric, for sharing your work. And I'll add the link to your website. So when I post this episode, the link will be in my post so people could reach out to you. And thank you for being my guest today. Really appreciate your time. Have a good day.
Thank you, Will. Enjoy talking to you. Look forward to meeting in the future.
Thank you.